Welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about a subject that has been on my mind. It's probably been on your mind. It's that of judgment. And if you're not aware, judgment is something that we do on a regular basis. We judge things in a negative context. I don't mean discernment, so I don't mean making distinctions between things. I mean judgments as far as criticisms, and often impulsive criticisms of ourselves, of other people, of the world, of certain political parties, of certain people. These just kind of happen automatically. So, and because we do this on a regular basis, we've also internalized those judgments as well, because again, we've also been conditioned to think this way, and to feel this way about ourselves and about other people or groups of people. And so this is a very common phenomenon, and it does cause us to suffer unnecessarily. So I wanted to cover this very briefly in today's video. I'm also writing an article about negative thinking, and I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail in a few days. But for now, let me read a note and then we'll break it down as we normally do. So if you judge before you take time to understand, you have admitted to your own ignorance and accepted your insufficiency. So what do I mean by this? Well, first of all, judgment typically happens in two different contexts and oftentimes simultaneously. So in a reciprocal manner. So internally, so we judge ourselves, and externally, judging other people or the world. Now, oftentimes when we do that internally, it's because of a memory that we had, or we're by ourselves, we're doing work, we're reflecting on our lives, we're ruminating, thinking about the past, and this causes us to judge ourselves and or simultaneously potentially judge other people. Like, this person did me wrong, they're stupid, they have ridiculous ideas, their ideas are going to lead to the end of the world, or the breakdown of society. And I'm not thinking about any particular political groups, but there's a schism right now in our society, and that's causing us to fight with one another, but also to fight with ourselves. Because when we train ourselves to ourselves to think this way, what we're doing is either we're simultaneously taking that fight internally and projecting it outwards, so we don't have to focus on what we need to fix internally so that we can improve our lives. Or what we're doing is we're we're blind to the other perspectives that we can hold, that would allow us to see the world in a different way, but that would require us to really question our own beliefs, which would cause more pain, right? More suffering, because when you're questioning your beliefs, you're also questioning your own identity. So if you judge before you take time to understand, you've accepted your insufficiency. Why? Because you've accepted that you cannot possibly adopt 100, 200, hundreds of different perspectives on the matter. You've accepted that inherently, unconsciously, you've accepted that. Maybe you can hold a couple different perspectives, but you can't hold that many. It's not possible to hold that many perspectives. So you've inherently limited the abilities that or rather, you've inherently limited the perspectives that you can take on the matter. But that in itself is an insufficiency. Now, listen, we're not God. We're not omnipotent. We can't know everything all at once, all the time. But taking time to understand requires us to expend more energy, requires us to do what I just mentioned, to question what we believe, to see if that is true. Maybe that will question our own identity. And if we pause to take time to understand, we might understand something about our own human nature that we don't want to look at. That's scary, that would require us to change in some way, fundamental to our own being. But because of, like I mentioned in a previous video about getting what you want, actually finding out what you want, but because that part of ourselves that's fighting or that's judging is meeting a current set of needs, we're not moving away from that. Or because that part is in less pain than a future state, even a future psychological state. So when you look inwards and you discover that everything that you thought you were, you're really not, or certain things that you thought you are, you're not, that can be very, very painful. It's an ego destroying, these are ego destroying phenomenon. This is not something to take lightly. And you've also admitted your own ignorance, right? Because if you don't take time to understand. So if you judge something impulsively, like bang, something happens, you judge it negatively, right? It's a criticism, it's an attack, it's something to that effect. Well, you're admitting your own ignorance by virtue of doing that, because you could know if you wanted to know, if you took the time to know and to understand, you could, but you don't. You don't because you don't want to. You don't because your perspective is feeding a part of your identity that is giving you some sense of certainty in the world, that's giving you some sense of purpose. But nevertheless, you have to scale all the way back and find out, well, hang on a second. If I'm judging something, if I have vitriol towards something, towards myself, if I'm not taking myself, I'm not treating myself with respect, if I'm not treating other people with respect, then is that really the way that I would want to live? And also taking a few more steps back, what would happen if I understood different positions? What would happen if I did that? Because you might ask yourself that question, and the answer that comes might be, if you really took that question seriously, what would happen is you would effectively realize that you would start to understand the problem or the position or the situation from different perspectives. And so you couldn't have that sense of certainty or that sense of like solid groundedness in that belief that you have or that position that you hold. Or you might find yourself getting weaker because you're taking on a different perspective. And you don't want to feel weaker. You want to feel strong. You want to feel like you're fighting the good fight against other people. Or maybe you feel like by berating yourself, you're going to get yourself to do things that you wouldn't normally do if you treated yourself with compassion. But how's that working out for you? You know, is that working out well for you? Do you think it's sustainable to constantly berate yourself and judge yourself and criticize yourself and speak negatively towards yourself? Is that what you want to be doing for the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life? Is that how you want to be thinking? Is this the kind of perspective or attitude that you want to have? You have to ask yourself that. Do I want my current state to be repeated for the next 50 years of my life? If the answer is no, then maybe take some time, right, before you judge. Take a breath. You know, you feel that emotion kind of wash over you, that anger, that rage, that frustration, confusion, right, disorientation, anxiety. Take a breath and find out, okay, why am I reacting this way? What is this stimulating within me? What's my initial impulse? How can I see that in a different way? Is there a different way to look at that perspective? Is there a way for me to understand this person or to understand a different part of myself or to understand the world in such a way that would make this perspective make sense? So you make it make sense to you. So if it doesn't make sense, try to make it make sense, because it makes sense to somebody. To make sense to somebody, it must somehow contain some element of sense making. So if you realize that, you could say, okay, well, I guess it makes sense to that person. But for these reasons, I could see where they're coming from. But for these reasons, once you start to kind of like bring a little bit of understanding to the situation, you'll notice that the negative emotional qualities, they start to dissipate, they attenuate, the intensity is lessened, and you're able to more easily let it go and move on. And you're also more likely to treat them with understanding, compassion, and yourself as well. Like, oh, I understand where that's coming from. But if you're taking that perspective towards yourself, you have to question that part of you that's analyzing and judging and criticizing and attacking yourself as if another person is also attacking you, right? You might say to this person, well, okay, so like, let's say, for example, it's a person that you want to keep a relationship with. This is the key point, is that when you have a part of you that's attacking another part of you, so let's put that the you and the world thing aside for now, and let's go with you in relationship to you, right? Different parts of you. So you might ask yourself, so this is a part of you, right? You don't want to beat it down, beat it to death. You don't want to deconstruct it and attack it and get rid of it and expel it and exercise it like it's some kind of demon, right? You want to get it to work for you, right? You got to bring it on your side. It's got to be working for your team. It's never going to leave. It's never going to leave. It's always going to be here, right? So what you're trying to do here is understand its perspective as if it's a person who's never going to leave your life ever. Remember, like the analogy I gave in a previous video, it's like a visitor, but the visitor will never leave. It's always going to come back knocking on your door. It's internal to you. So if you have a quote unquote unwanted visitor, the best thing that you can do is treat them with hospitality. So that way, when they're in your house, they can actually treat you with respect and not mess everything up, right? So again, regard yourself in this way. Regard yourself as if you're somebody, or that part is something, is a part of you, which it is. It's somebody who you're going to keep a relationship with no matter what. As a matter of like, it's involuntary, right? It's going to be a part of you. So like, you know what? If this is going to be involuntary, then I might as well make the best of this relationship. Makes sense, right? It's like having to see somebody every single day and you have no choice. You have no choice. Would you want a hostile relationship with this person? No, of course not. How is that sustainable? You're going to be stressed out. It's always going to be on your mind. You're going to be drained of energy. You're going to age faster. You're going to feel sick. It's all of these host of negative effects. Why is it any different with you? It's not, right? So you have to ask yourself, okay, where's this coming from? Where's this judgment coming from, this criticism? Now, is that true? Or is there a way that is not true? Okay, in what way isn't it true? Okay, so that makes sense. So then if I could take this part and make it work for me, how could I do that? I say, okay, so let's take this rationality, let's break it down into its components. And let's figure out exactly what it is that you want from me. Like, what are you trying to get out of me? Because clearly you're doing this for a reason. Like it's as if you're talking to this part of yourself. And this part is going to be telling you probably, well, I want to get you to do something. You're like, okay, well, what do you want me to do? Because clearly, like, you're judging, you're criticizing, you're attacking. Like, what are you looking? Well, I want you to be better. Okay. Well, is there a way that we could find a way to be better without this approach? Because to be honest, when this happens, you know, when we're thinking this way, or when you're doing this, like, it really messes up my emotions. It gets my mood really low, and whatever you're trying to accomplish is not happening. So let's try to get this done. So how can we do this? And the other part of you might say, and this is kind of like you're having a conversation with yourself. You're like, okay, well, I mean, maybe I could just kind of remind you somehow, and maybe I could tell you, hey, that's not right, or stop right there. And then maybe you can kind of fill in the gap, and then we can talk about, okay, what's the logical next move, right? Do I need to pay more attention to my body? Do I need to make amends with this person? Am I being distracted too much? How can we create a system together? So you don't want me to do this, okay? So you're criticizing me, judging me, because you want me to be better. You want me to do something that's more in line with, you know, what our mission is. Well, first of all, let's find out what our mission is. Okay, so what are we trying to do here? Okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish. Well, why don't we put that on a schedule, right? So that every time this happens, I can make a note of it. Maybe I can make a note of it. Maybe I'm just not aware of what's happening. So I can make a note of this occurrence. So that way, whenever it happens, you know, we don't have to have this kind of screaming match internally, but I could just kind of be aware of it. And we can develop together this, like, a method where I don't have to be involved in this process, where we're just kind of, you know, going nowhere, and it's draining my time, it's draining my energy, and we're all also not getting the outcome. So it's about having a dialogue with yourself. So remember that. So I hope this video was helpful. I covered a few things there. I'm not sure exactly how to summarize, but I think fundamentally understanding that when you judge before you take time to understand, it means you're simultaneously admitting to your own ignorance and accepting your insufficiency. So the best thing that you can do is all of the things that I mentioned. I don't remember what they are. So if you want to go back and watch the video, but I hope that was helpful. If you have a comment, if you like the video, leave a comment. If you have a question, you know what I mean, ask a question. And if you want me to cover something in the future, let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know. Subscribe to my newsletter because I'm publishing articles there now. So I think you're going to enjoy that too. And in the meantime, I'll see you tomorrow. I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday. It's 8 o'clock. I probably should have uploaded this earlier, but But yeah, came to me now. So I hope you enjoy it anyway, and I'll see you tomorrow.